Under the pale luminescence of twin moons, the air hummed with an almost palpable tension. The ceremonial grounds of Zarathar Prime were alive with the sounds of alien instruments, their haunting melodies weaving a foreboding spell over the gathered crowd. Cloaked figures, their silken robes glimmering like liquid starlight, encircled a central altar of polished obsidian. The alien women of the Zarian caste, revered as both priestesses and warriors, moved with synchronized grace, their luminous skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. Bound and bloodied, a human man was dragged forward, his boots leaving smeared trails of dirt and blood on the pristine floor. His breathing was labored, each exhale a testament to the beating he'd endured before being thrust into this strange, otherworldly tableau. His name was Alex Drace, a former soldier whose ship had been shot down in the disputed fringes of space. Captured by Zarian hunters, he had been deemed an offering to their deities, his fate sealed by traditions older than human history. The High Priestess, her angular features framed by cascading silver hair, stepped forward. Her piercing violet eyes scanned the crowd before landing on Alex. She raised an ornate blade, its edges gleaming with an iridescent sheen, and spoke in a resonant voice that carried over the gathering. The Zarian language, incomprehensible to Alex, sounded like a melody with undertones of thunder. For Alex, the situation had taken on a surreal quality. He had fought in wars, survived shipwrecks, and faced death countless times, but the otherworldly beauty of his captors made this moment disorienting. Their elegance and poise clashed violently with the brutality of his situation. His mind raced, searching for an escape, a way to avoid becoming a sacrifice to alien gods he didn't believe in. As the priestess approached, the blade raised high, something unexpected happened. The sharp cry of a bird echoed above, drawing all eyes upward. A shadow passed over the moons, and a gust of wind swept through the grounds, scattering petals and extinguishing half the ceremonial flames. The crowd murmured uneasily, and the priestess hesitated, lowering the blade slightly. A voice, deep and commanding, echoed through the air. It wasn't Zarian, it was an ancient dialect that even the priestesses seemed to struggle to understand. The crowd parted as another figure emerged from the shadows, draped in robes darker than the night. The newcomer's face was hidden, but their presence was undeniable. "This one is not meant for the altar," the figure declared in a language Alex could miraculously understand. The priestess turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. "Who dares to disrupt the sacred rite?" The robed figure stepped closer, revealing a metallic mask that obscured their features. "The gods have other plans for him." Alex, still on his knees, struggled to process what was happening. The Zarian crowd was in chaos now, whispering among themselves. The priestess, clearly torn between duty and fear of defying the gods, glanced at Alex and then back at the intruder. "Prove your claim," she demanded. The robed figure reached into their garment and produced a small, glowing orb. It pulsed with a rhythm that mirrored a heartbeat. The crowd gasped collectively, and even the priestess's composure wavered. "The Heartstone," she whispered. "It hasn't been seen in centuries." The robed figure nodded. "It has chosen this human. He is not a mere offering. He is a harbinger." The priestess hesitated for only a moment before sheathing her blade. With a sharp gesture, she signaled the guards to release Alex. They obeyed reluctantly, stepping back as Alex collapsed to the ground, his body trembling from exhaustion and disbelief. The robed figure knelt beside him, their voice softer now. "You are more important than you realize, human. But there is much to learn, and little time." Alex wanted to speak, to demand answers, but his strength failed him. Darkness crept into the edges of his vision, and he surrendered to unconsciousness. When he awoke, he was no longer in the ceremonial grounds. The air was warmer, the light softer. He lay on a bed of woven fabric, and the faint scent of alien herbs filled the room. His wounds had been tended, the pain dulled to a manageable ache. "You're awake," a voice said. It was the robed figure, their mask now removed to reveal a face that was both humanoid and distinctly alien. Their features were sharp and symmetrical, their eyes an unearthly shade of gold. "Who are you?" Alex croaked, his throat dry. The figure handed him a cup filled with a sweet, tangy liquid. "You may call me Kael. I am a guardian of sorts. My task is to ensure that the prophecies unfold as they should." Alex drank deeply, the liquid soothing his parched throat. Prophecies? What does that have to do with me? Kael leaned back, their expression unreadable. The Zarians believe their gods demand sacrifice to maintain balance. But the truth is more complicated. The Heartstone you saw, it's an artifact of immense power, capable of altering the fate of entire worlds. It chose you. Alex frowned, his head swimming with questions. Why me? I'm just a soldier. Kael's golden eyes seemed to pierce through him. The Heartstone doesn't choose randomly. You carry something within you. Something that could tip the scales in a conflict far greater than you've imagined. Before Alex could press further, the door to the room slid open, revealing the High Priestess. Her demeanor was different now, less rigid and more curious. She stepped inside cautiously, her violet eyes fixed on Alex. I owe you an apology, she began, her voice softer than he remembered. The ceremony was a mistake. Alex sat up, wincing as his injuries protested. A mistake? You were going to kill me. She inclined her head. And in doing so, we might have doomed ourselves. Kael has explained your importance, and I am willing to set aside tradition to ensure our survival. Alex glanced between Kael and the priestess, suspicion gnawing at him. What exactly are you asking of me? Kael stood, their gaze steady. To embrace your role as the harbinger. To unite worlds that have long been at odds and to face an enemy that seeks to destroy them all. The weight of their words settled heavily on Alex. He was no stranger to responsibility, but this was unlike anything he had faced before. Yet, as impossible as it seemed, a part of him felt a strange pull. A sense that, perhaps, this was the reason he had survived when so many others hadn't. Taking a deep breath, he met their gazes. I don't know how much help I'll be, but I'll try. Kael's lips curved into a faint smile. That's all we can ask. As the days turned into weeks, Alex trained under Kael's guidance, learning about the Zarian world, their history, and the conflict that loomed on the horizon. The priestess, whose name he learned was Seris, became an unexpected ally, her initial coldness giving way to a begrudging respect. Together, they uncovered secrets about the Heartstone and the ancient force it was meant to combat. Alex's journey was just beginning, but he knew one thing for certain: his life, and the lives of countless others, would never be the same. The days that followed blurred into an intense regimen of learning, healing, and preparation. Alex found himself pulled into a world he couldn't have imagined, immersed in the customs and technologies of the Zarians. Despite his initial resentment, he began to bond with Kael and Seris, their guidance both harsh and necessary. Kael, ever the enigmatic teacher, pushed Alex beyond his limits. The Heartstone chose you not because of who you are now, they said during one of their grueling sessions, but because of who you can become. Stop fighting your potential. Alex clenched his fists, frustration etched into every line of his face. Potential doesn't mean much if I can't even understand what's expected of me. Kael's expression softened, their alien features strangely comforting. The Heartstone isn't just a weapon, it's a bridge. It will allow you to connect with others in ways that transcend language and culture. But first, you must open yourself to its influence. Easier said than done, Alex thought bitterly. The artifact, housed in a secure chamber, emanated a constant hum that resonated in his chest whenever he approached it. Touching it was like plunging his hand into a river of molten stars, beautiful, overwhelming, and incomprehensible. Seris, for her part, took it upon herself to teach Alex about Zarian society. Understanding us is as important as wielding the Heartstone, she explained during one of their long conversations. Our people are proud, but that pride can be a weakness. Convincing them to follow a human will require more than strength. It will require wisdom. Their discussions often veered into tense territory, Seris's belief in her people's superiority clashing with Alex's pragmatism. Yet, as much as they argued, there was an undeniable respect growing between them. One evening, as Alex stood on a balcony overlooking the sprawling city of Zarathar, Seris joined him. The city shimmered under the light of the twin moons, its crystalline towers reaching for the heavens. "Do you miss your world?" she asked, her voice unusually gentle. Alex didn't answer immediately. He traced the distant horizon with his eyes, the alien beauty of it both awe-inspiring and isolating. "I miss the simplicity of it. The idea that I knew where I stood, what my purpose was. Here. Everything feels like a test I'm not sure I'll pass. Seris studied him, her violet eyes reflecting the moonlight. Doubt is a sign of wisdom. The truly dangerous are those who never question their path. Their moment of quiet was interrupted by Kael, who appeared suddenly, their demeanor urgent. The council has convened. They've decided to address the Heartstone and its bearer. Seris's expression hardened. This will not be an easy meeting. The council chamber was an imposing structure, its walls lined with intricate carvings that told the story of Zarian victories and sacrifices. Alex stood at the center, Kael and Seris flanking him. Around them, a semicircle of Zarian leaders watched with scrutinizing eyes. The leader of the council, an elder named Zarian, leaned forward. His skin was a deep shade of blue, his gaze sharp and calculating. "A human," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "And you claim this creature has been chosen by the Heartstone?" Kael stepped forward, their tone calm but firm. "The artifact's resonance does not lie, Counselor. Alex Drace is the harbinger foretold in our ancient texts." Zarian sneered. "Foretold by myths and shadows. How can we trust this? How can we trust him?" Alex felt the weight of their gazes, the hostility in the room almost tangible. He took a deep breath, stepping forward despite Seris's warning glance. "You don't have to trust me," he began, his voice steady. "But you should trust the evidence. The Heartstone chose me, and for reasons I don't fully understand, I'm connected to it. I didn't ask for this, but I won't turn away from it either. If there's a chance I can help, then I'll fight for it. For all of us." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Zarian's expression didn't soften, but others on the council exchanged thoughtful looks. "You speak boldly," Zarian said, his tone icy. "But words are not enough. If you wish to prove your worth, you will do so in the trial of ascension." Kael's face darkened. "That's unnecessary. The Heartstone has already." Zarian cut them off with a raised hand. "The trial is tradition. If the human survives, then perhaps he is worthy. If not, then the Heartstone's choice was a mistake." Seris stepped forward, her voice laced with anger. "The trial is barbaric. He is injured and unprepared." Alex raised a hand to stop her. "I'll do it." Kael and Seris turned to him in shock. "You don't understand what you're agreeing to," Seris hissed. "Maybe not," Alex admitted, "but if this is what it takes to convince them, I'll do it." The trial of ascension was held in the great arena, a massive structure that dwarfed anything Alex had ever seen. Thousands of Zarians filled the stands, their anticipation a living, breathing entity. At the center of the arena, Alex stood alone, armed with a Zarian blade and his resolve. The trial began with a deafening roar as the gates opposite him opened, releasing a creature that could only be described as a nightmare. It was a towering beast, its scaled body shimmering with a sickly green hue, its eyes glowing with malice. Alex tightened his grip on the blade, every muscle in his body screaming in protest. The creature lunged, its massive claws tearing through the air. Alex dodged, barely avoiding a fatal blow, and countered with a slash that glanced off the creature's thick hide. The battle was brutal, each moment a test of Alex's endurance and ingenuity. He used the arena's terrain to his advantage, leading the beast into traps and exploiting its blind spots. The crowd watched in rapt silence, their disbelief gradually giving way to awe. Finally, with a well-placed strike, Alex drove his blade into the creature's vulnerable neck. It collapsed with a guttural roar, its body twitching before going still. The arena erupted into cheers and gasps. Alex stood over the fallen beast, his body trembling with exhaustion but his spirit unbroken. In the stands, Kael and Seris exchanged a look of relief and pride. Zarian, for the first time, seemed uncertain. Alex raised his gaze to the crowd, his voice ringing out with newfound confidence. "I didn't come here to prove myself. But if this is what it takes to show you that I'm on your side, then so be it. Together, we can face whatever's coming. Divided, we won't stand a chance." The cheers grew louder, and Alex knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would test him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope, not just for himself, but for the fragile alliance he was beginning to forge. The echoes of the cheering crowd still rang in Alex's ears as he limped back to the chambers beneath the great arena. His muscles screamed in protest, and every step felt like a monumental effort. Yet, there was a quiet satisfaction in the pit of his stomach. He'd survived the trial, and perhaps, just maybe, he'd begun to earn the trust of these alien people. Seris and Kael were waiting for him, their faces a mix of relief and disbelief. Seris stepped forward first, her usual stoic expression softened by something Alex couldn't quite place. "You're an idiot," she said, her tone bordering on affectionate. "But you're also impressive. Few have faced a rat-hack beast and lived, let alone bested one." Kael offered a small, rare smile. "The council cannot deny your strength now. You've planted the seeds of acceptance, though it will take more than one victory to make them bloom." Alex sank onto a bench, wincing as Kael pressed a small device against his arm. A soothing warmth spread through his body as it mended the worst of his injuries. "Well," Alex muttered, "if this is what it takes to earn a seat at the table, I'm glad I didn't have to fight two of those things." Seris's lips twitched into the faintest hint of a smile. "You may yet have to. Convincing the council is only the beginning." Kael nodded gravely. "The true enemy is still out there, and the Heartstone's purpose remains unclear. We need to understand why it chose you and what role you are meant to play in the coming storm." Alex leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You keep saying, the enemy. What exactly are we up against?" Kael and Seris exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Kael spoke. "They call themselves the Vorath. They are not like us, or like you. They are a hive-mind, driven by a singular purpose, to consume and assimilate. Entire worlds have fallen to them, their inhabitants transformed into extensions of the Vorath collective." Alex felt a chill crawl up his spine. "And they're coming here?" Seris's expression darkened. "The Vorath have already begun their incursions at the edges of our territory. Skirmishes have been reported, but our forces are unprepared for the scale of what's coming. That's why the Heartstone is so vital. It has the power to unite us, or to destroy us if wielded carelessly." The enormity of their words settled over Alex like a heavy weight. He had thought his survival in the arena was the peak of his challenges, but it was merely a prelude to something far greater, and far deadlier. The weeks that followed were a blur of preparation. With his status as the Heartstone's bearer reluctantly acknowledged by the council, Alex was given access to resources and training he hadn't thought possible. Zarian technology, both advanced and alien, became tools he had to master, while his physical and mental limits were pushed to breaking points. Kael oversaw his training with an almost inhuman patience, guiding him through the complexities of the Heartstone. The artifact seemed to respond to his emotions, its power fluctuating with his focus and intent. When he was calm, it hummed with a steady warmth, projecting a protective barrier or enhancing his physical abilities. But when fear or anger crept in, its energy became erratic, dangerous even. "You must master your emotions," Kael warned during one particularly grueling session. "The Heartstone amplifies what is within you. If you cannot control yourself, you will not control it." Seris, meanwhile, took charge of his political education. The council remained divided on whether Alex should be trusted, and she worked tirelessly to ensure he understood the nuances of Zarian diplomacy. More than once, she scolded him for his bluntness, though he often caught her smirking when his straightforward approach cut through the council's endless posturing. Despite the challenges, there were moments of levity. Alex found himself forming bonds with Seris and Kael, their shared mission forging a camaraderie that transcended their differences. He learned about their pasts, Kael's mysterious role as a guardian of ancient artifacts, Seris's rise through the Zarian ranks despite her unconventional views. In turn, he shared stories of Earth, of his time as a soldier and the people he'd lost. One night, as they sat around a glowing fire in one of Zarathar's lush gardens, Seris asked, "Do you ever wish you hadn't survived your crash?" The question caught Alex off guard. He stared into the fire for a long moment before answering. "Sometimes. It would have been easier. But then I think about what's at stake now, what could happen if I don't try. And I can't ignore that." Seris nodded thoughtfully. "It's strange. I've always believed humans to be reckless, impulsive. But you You have a strength that's different. It's not just physical. It's stubborn hope. Alex chuckled. Stubborn hope. I'll take that as a compliment. Kael, who had been silent, added, Hope is a powerful thing, Alex. More powerful than the Heartstone, perhaps. Don't underestimate it. As the Vorath threat drew closer, Alex's role became clearer. The Heartstone, Kael revealed, had the ability to forge connections, not just between individuals but between entire civilizations. It was a tool of unity, capable of breaking down barriers and fostering understanding. But it required a wielder who could bridge the gaps between disparate peoples. The final test of Alex's abilities came sooner than expected. A Vorath scouting vessel breached Zarian territory, its presence a grim reminder of the enemy's growing reach. The council, divided as ever, debated endlessly about how to respond. But Alex, Kael, and Seris knew there was no time for hesitation. Together, they led a strike team to intercept the vessel. It was Alex's first real taste of the Vorath, and it was worse than he'd imagined. The creatures were grotesque, their forms a horrifying amalgamation of flesh and machinery. They moved with a terrifying synchronicity, their hive-mind making them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. But the Heartstone, wielded by Alex's growing confidence, became their greatest weapon. Its energy shielded their team from the Vorath's attacks, its light disorienting the hive creatures. In the chaos, Alex found a strange clarity, his mind and body working in perfect harmony. When the battle was over, the Zarian team emerged victorious, though not without losses. The Vorath ship was destroyed, its threat neutralized, for now. Back on Zarathar, the victory was celebrated as a turning point. The council, though still cautious, began to rally behind Alex, recognizing him as a symbol of hope in their darkest hour. But Alex knew the fight was far from over. The Vorath were coming, and the fragile alliances he had forged would be tested to their limits. Standing on the balcony of the council chambers, with Seris and Kael by his side, he gazed out at the city below. "We've bought ourselves time," Seris said, her voice steady. "But the real war is just beginning." Alex nodded, the Heartstone's faint hum a constant reminder of the burden, and the potential that lay ahead. "Then we'll fight. Together." For the first time since his crash, he felt not just hope but a sense of purpose. And as the twin moons of Zarathar bathed the city in their light, he silently vowed that he would see this fight through to the end, whatever it took. The days following the Vorath skirmish were a whirlwind of preparations and uneasy alliances. The council's approval of Alex as the Heartstone's bearer brought newfound responsibilities and scrutiny. Zarian scientists, tacticians, and warriors surrounded him at all hours, probing the artifact's potential and devising strategies to use it against the Vorath. Though he appreciated their focus, Alex quickly found their unrelenting pace overwhelming. His sessions with Kael and Seris became his only moments of respite, though even those were filled with rigorous training and intense discussions. Kael, ever the patient mentor, took him deeper into the Heartstone's mysteries. "The artifact is alive in a way," Kael explained one evening, their voice resonating in the quiet chamber. "It responds to your will, your emotions, your intentions. But it also has its own essence, its own purpose. You must listen to it, Alex, as much as it listens to you." Alex furrowed his brow, the Heartstone resting in his hands, its radiant core pulsing faintly. "Listen to it? It's a glowing rock, Kael. How do I even begin to do that?" Kael's gaze didn't waver. "By quieting the chaos within yourself. When you achieve balance, its voice will become clear." The word stuck with Alex, and he found himself spending more time meditating, a practice he'd once scoffed at but now approached with earnest determination. Bit by bit, he felt a shift within himself. The artifact's power no longer felt like a volatile force he needed to tame but a partner in his journey, a presence guiding him toward something greater. Meanwhile, Seris worked tirelessly to shore up support among the Zarian military and civilians. Her reputation as a skilled commander gave her words weight, but even she faced resistance from factions unwilling to trust a human. "I've argued your case until my voice has nearly given out," she admitted one evening as they shared a rare moment of quiet in the city gardens. "Some are beginning to see reason, but others, their hatred runs deep." Alex nodded, understanding all too well. "Trust takes time. And we might not have enough of it." Her sharp eyes softened slightly. "You're proving them wrong with every step you take. Don't underestimate the power of persistence. Even the hardest stone can be worn smooth by water." He smirked. "Are you calling me persistent or just stubborn?" "Both," she replied, a rare smile tugging at her lips. As the Vorath threat loomed ever closer, reports of their movements became more alarming. Their ships were no longer content to scout, they were assembling fleets, preparing for full-scale invasion. The Zarian defenses, advanced though they were, seemed woefully inadequate against the sheer numbers and relentless coordination of the enemy. The council called an emergency assembly, the grand chamber filled with voices raised in panic and anger. Alex, Seris, and Kael stood at the center of the chaos, trying to make their voices heard. "We cannot rely on defensive measures alone," Alex argued, his voice carrying over the din. "The Vorath won't stop until they've consumed everything in their path. We need to unite with other civilizations, create alliances to stand against them." A counselor scoffed, their tone dripping with disdain. "And what makes you think other species would trust us, let alone fight alongside us? The Zarian people have not forgotten the betrayals of the past." "Neither have I," Alex shot back, his gaze unwavering. "But this isn't about the past, it's about survival. You can cling to your grudges and watch the galaxy burn, or you can take a chance and fight for something greater." The room fell into tense silence, the weight of his words hanging heavily. Slowly, one by one, the council members nodded their reluctant agreement. It wasn't a victory Alex relished, but it was a step forward. The following weeks were consumed by frantic diplomacy. Alex, Seris, and Kael led delegations to neighboring star systems, seeking allies among species the Zarians had long regarded with suspicion, or outright hostility. Some meetings ended in bitter arguments, others in fragile promises. But gradually, a coalition began to take shape. Among their new allies were the Yelver, a nomadic species of engineers who brought invaluable technological expertise, and the Korath, fierce warriors whose telepathic abilities gave them a unique edge against the Vorath hive-mind. Each alliance was a fragile thread, but together, they wove a tapestry of hope. As the coalition grew, so too did Alex's connection to the Heartstone. He found himself able to reach out through its power, creating a network of shared understanding among the disparate species. Old animosities began to fade as common purpose took hold. Yet, with every victory came new challenges. The Vorath's incursions grew bolder, their forces striking deeper into allied territory. In one devastating attack, they annihilated a Zarian colony, leaving no survivors. The loss shook the coalition to its core, and doubt began to creep in. "Is this enough?" Seris asked one night as they reviewed battle plans. "Are we enough?" Alex placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We have to be. Giving up isn't an option." Her gaze met his, and for a moment, the weight of their shared burden was palpable. "Then we keep fighting." The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Vorath launched a massive assault, their fleet descending on the allied stronghold of Vorath Prime. The coalition forces, though outnumbered, stood ready, their resolve bolstered by Alex's leadership and the unity forged by the Heartstone. As the battle raged, Alex found himself at the forefront, the Heartstone blazing in his hands. Its power surged through him, weaving through the chaos to create moments of clarity. He directed strikes, shielded allies, and disrupted the Vorath hive-mind, each action turning the tide in their favor. But the Vorath were relentless, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm. As the allied fleet began to falter, Alex made a desperate decision. "I can reach their core," he said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "The Heartstone can sever their connection, disrupt their hive-mind. But I'll need cover." Seris and Kael exchanged a glance, understanding the risk. "We'll buy you the time you need," Seris said firmly. "Just don't get yourself killed." With their support, Alex boarded a strike vessel, the Heartstone guiding him to the Vorath's central command ship. The battle inside was fierce, the alien corridors teeming with Vorath drones. But Alex pressed on, the artifact's light carving a path through the darkness. At the ship's core, he found it, a massive nexus of pulsing, organic machinery. The hive-mind's anchor. Channeling every ounce of the Heartstone's power, Alex unleashed a surge of energy that rippled through the Vorath network. The hive-mind screamed in protest, its connection fracturing. The Vorath ships faltered, their drones collapsing as the network disintegrated. The Allied forces seized the moment, delivering a final, decisive blow. When Alex returned to the Coalition fleet, battered but alive, he was met with cheers and tears of relief. The battle was over, the Vorath threat defeated, at least for now. As the Coalition leaders convened to discuss rebuilding, Alex found himself once again on a balcony overlooking Zarathar. Seris and Kael stood beside him, their faces etched with exhaustion and quiet triumph. "You did it," Seris said, her voice filled with admiration. "We did it," Alex corrected, a small smile breaking through his fatigue. "Together." Kael inclined their head, their enigmatic eyes glimmering with approval. The Heartstone chose well. As the twin moons rose over the city, Alex allowed himself a moment of peace. The galaxy still held countless challenges, but for the first time, he believed in its future, and in his place within it.